Welcome back, fellow people from around the world. Here's another episode of the Global Atheists from Skeptic Heaven. In this episode, I'll be joining Hen, and we will be talking about the influence of popular media on the religious sentiments of people, be it atheism or any particular religion or against any particular religion. And let's begin. Where's Hen? Ah,
Yay!
yes. Yay.
Hello.
Hello. Uh, how was the week? It's a weekend, yeah. How is the weekend going?
Um, Today the weather is a bit bad. I mean, what you see here behind me is a picture I took a few hours ago with the moon and Jupiter, but it's
Okay.
mostly been raining today. But now we've got a spot of not raining. But otherwise, yeah, pretty good.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. I do kind of like rain, so I might be a bit biased. And
In general,
so,
I in
yeah,
general I
sorry.
like rain, but we've been having quite a lot of it lately, and so I could do with a bit less.
Ah, yeah. Having the same weather for a long time kind of gets boring. That's understandable. And talking about weekends, weekend is the time when a lot of people catch up on TV shows, movies, etc. Are you following any?
Not really. I had, with a friend of mine, scheduled to watch a movie later tonight, but he called off because, well, he got sick, and
Oh,
so none of that. And need to look it up what we had in mind to run. Uh, oh, yeah, The Swarm. We're doing a bad movie night occasionally. And The Swarm is supposed to be a very bad movie. Never saw it, so it should be fun.
yeah, watching bad films with friends can be fun, but when you are watching a film for the film's sake, then no.
Oh, exactly. Last episode, we watched Left Behind, one of the Left Behind movies. That was great fun. God, that was terrible. I don't know if you know about them. Left Behind is a series of American movies, Christian idea about the rapture. Rapture is a weird Christian idea. I mean, it's definitely not mainstream Christianity that when Christ returns to earth, um, the faithful or the saved, I don't know exactly how it works, will be taken away alive and moved into somewhere, presumably heaven, but that's not really made clear. And so that means essentially that when they're driving a car, the car will crash, stuff like that.
Yeah. I have heard about rapture a bit, and talking about the rapture and that whole thing with Christianity, the second coming and rapture is a bit quite what you described, and yeah, it's quite ambiguous. It's not described in details. The whole second coming thing is not described in details. It's something that people has been guessing at for 2000 years now, I guess.
Yeah.
Not 2000, not 2000, but more than 1,000 years.
Mhm.
And coming to the rapture thing, I do you watch anime, or have you watched any anime?
I've watched some, but I definitely not a fan.
Okay. But there's one particular anime which I really liked. That is, it's quite popular now, not when it came out, which is Neon Genesis Evangelion. They what they did was they brought in the whole biblical thing, not in a religious way. They brought in biblical stories of the angels and the whole rapture thing, and bought it into a mecha anime thing, and it's really beautifully done. But yeah, the rapture thing reminded me of that. And but when you see movies, any popular media in general, it doesn't even have to be popular. Any the depiction of society or etc. in different movies, you will find that religious sentiments play different role in them. A common theme that I have seen is both in India and media outside. It is, if a character is religious, the character is good. There's a very dumb equation that is played, very overplayed, that religious equals to good. That is especially in the TV shows where it's more about going with popular narrative instead of doing something new, the soap operas and those kind of relatively speaking low budget shows. But they also have a very huge audience, like viewership, so that does play into quite a bit of influencing the sentiments of people, and
Mhm.
that's what we are going to be discussing here. And have you noticed anything like that in whatever you have watched? Like, you might, you don't have to watch things vividly. I don't watch that
Yeah.
many anyway. I have stopped being watching since I have gone out of college, but I have watched quite a few, and these are the very common sentiments that I've seen there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a great consumer of popular media. I don't watch TV, for instance.
The what?
I don't watch TV.
Oh, okay, okay. Me neither. I don't even have a TV.
No, neither do I. I mean, I use the internet and my computers for watching the news and stuff like that. And the classic TV, I don't have one. I don't watch it. So my view is a bit skewed to, let's say, the internet, YouTube. Mm, That being said, um, while in general our media isn't particularly religious in nature, in let's say general entertainment, there are most of that is there is occasionally there is, well, let's say Christianity, and that's more general mainstream Christianity. And for instance, from my childhood, I well remember a few entertainment series that were Roman Catholicism themed,
Oh,
and they were quite popular.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They kind of seem to be. What were some of the popular ones that you grew up with? Something that you remember that has
Yeah,
left some kind of impact on you?
uh, I remember a series around essentially a Roman Catholic priest. Uh, he came from the more, let's say, western northern part of the Netherlands, who was dropped in a parish in Limburg, the south of the Netherlands, and had to learn to get on with the people there and stuff like that. It was a bit twee, a bit sweet, but in general quite nice. I mean, it was definitely entertaining, but it also had a firm Roman Catholic message, as in the importance of going to church, going to confession, salvation through prayer, stuff like that. Um, Not the interesting bit. I mean, the interesting bit was weirdly enough um, the tension between this priest and his parish boss. I mean, he was, I don't know the exact words in English for that. He was the second priest in the parish. The main the pastor was the boss, but he was an old man, and he was a young man, so he did the everyday stuff like hearing confession and let's say early morning mass, while the main priest did the Sunday mass, stuff like that. But there was quite a bit of tension between them, and that was the interesting bit of the series. It ran for 2 years, I think. It was quite popular.
Oh, oh, okay. And that is something that you kind of mentioned about, about the importance of church, and this is a similar theme is also common in the popular media in India, where unlike while there the popular religion is Christianity, here it is Hinduism. So it often circles around the people having rituals at home, going to rituals, going to temples and stuff. And a very funny thing that, so there are things where if the protagonist and the good people there are usually religious, and there are some shows which might address the superstition problem that we see, like superstition is a common issue, and people conning others in the name of religion. The For example, there in the West we have the evangelicals, the whole evangelical system, which is the mega churches and those stuff. And when even when the shows are addressing those, the villain who is taking advantage of the religious sentiments of people and fooling them are depicted as someone who is faking that connection with God, while the protagonist has a real connection with God, which is very hilarious. But that is the but that is the way they go. Instead of directly trying to debunk or directly speaking against the religious sentiments, and people taking advantage of that, they show one taking advantage and another good religious person being actually religious, and that is very hilarious. The other There's one particular show that had a lot of effect on me when I was growing up, in a positive way, not in a religious way, which is, have you heard about the show called Beyblades?
I may have. I mean, it doesn't really click as in, oh, that's it about. Can you explain a bit?
Yeah, it was an anime. I think they still have some versions of it going on, but it's not as popular as it used to be. It was at its peak in the 2000s, like 2010s and those era. That's when it peaked its popularity, and that's also one of the first anime that I watched, and I kind of followed the story when I was kid. And they had these toys, those spinning toys, and people would fight with each other with the toys, like one toy against each other. That was the whole thing. The whole thing was cooked up to sell toys, to be honest. If you look
Ah, okay, yeah.
if you look at now, just it's very similar to how Pokemon became so popular. It started with the
That's,
game, shows developed to sell the game, and then the shows became more popular than the game itself, and vice versa. Also, many you will also find many shows totally circling around card games, where the main goal is to sell those cards, and somehow the shows become popular, and it goes vice versa, like they sustain each other.
I mean,
That was
I must admit that quite a few of the shows I watched as a kid, and particularly kid shows like Thunderbirds, maybe you've heard about it, wasn't
yes, I have.
puppet show, pretty much.
Oh, okay, okay. I
And
think not yet.
in a sci-fi-ish superhero light. I mean, the merch was pretty much more important than the show itself.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But the merch was brilliant. Plasticky flying stuff and submarine. Oh, damn, I loved it. I can't remember exactly what the show was about, apart from Thunderbirds and International Rescue. Oh, yes, now I remember the name of that. And essentially, people get in trouble and they breaking out all kind of brilliant vehicles to rescue the people.
Oh, cool, cool, cool.
Uh,
I haven't heard about Thunderbirds, but it reminds me of Transformers.
it's pretty much like that. I mean, without the I mean, some of the vehicles even could do a bit of transformation, but that's not the main point. But I well remember having those toys in hindsight were rather plasticky, fake. But I mean, when you're 8 years old, you don't care about that.
Yeah, you totally don't. And if, you will also find that in the whole MCU thing, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is one of the most popular uh, mainstream media thing today. It's like a whole global, it's a whole global thing now, and they in it they intentionally change the costumes quite frequently from one movie to another because they want to sell different figurines for different shows
Oh,
instead.
I see. Yeah,
You
I mean,
might have noticed that.
yeah, I'm not a fan of superhero movies. I've seen a few, and some of them are entertaining, but in general, they're a bit bland and
Yeah,
probably
they are.
themselves.
Yeah, they totally are. Totally. I'm not a huge fan of the MCU either. They started out strong, but now they have diluted so much that they're
Yeah.
quite mediocre. Like if you look at the individual movies and the individual shows by itself, they are very mediocre. There are exceptions. The whole thing as a whole is quite fascinating, but individually they are very mediocre.
Yes,
They had
exactly.
some good movies. They have some good shows. Definitely, Loki is doing pretty well. Although I haven't watched it, but yeah, the
Yeah.
main goal
I
is
mean, when in the
commerce.
same time I talked earlier, when I was a child, I was very fond of the Batman comics, for instance, and the Spider-Man
Oh,
comics. And I must admit that a bit of me still does like that. But and there was also on TV a Batman. Um, you say that TV series that was rather comic-like, as in
I think it was the Adam West's one.
yeah,
I think you're talking about the era when West was the Batman.
yeah, yes, pretty much.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
He
we're
had a
talking,
very comedic.
yes,
That was a
yeah,
very comedic depiction of Batman. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But I mean, the modern movies, at best, they're entertaining and often they're terrible. I mean, I don't even know exactly which film that was, but let's say Batman Returns. I mean, one of them with lots of lights. God, what's his name? Can't remember it. No, never mind. I mean, it was terrible. Some of the Joker movies, they're, well, okay-ish. But it definitely not the fascination it had when I was a child.
Okay.
And I mean,
Ah,
I'm trying to put this into perspective. I mean, the Batman of the 1960s and 70s was, I mean, it was not particularly. I mean, it was, of course, very strong, but there was at least a humorous part to it. His interaction with his sidekick Robin, uh, that was definitely humorous.
yeah. Comic book was quite humorous then. Then slowly it became serious, and now it's back to being humorous. There are I'm talking about the mainstream sentiment, and I think as Raymond pointed out, the movie you're talking about is Batman and Robin Forever or Batman and Robin Returns, something like that. The one with George Clooney and I don't remember who Robin was, but Batman was George Clooney and the main villain was Arnold, which is Mr. Freeze.
Yeah. Oh yes, Mr. Freeze, of course. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. It was terrible.
Terrible.
Yeah, it was. Since we are talking about comic films, you will find that even in I'm not sure about no DC has it too, but DC has it more of a subdued version, while in Marvel you have directly characters from mythology. For example, we have Thor, we have Odin, and even Loki. They are directly from Norse mythology.
Yes.
and which is a bit surprising because when you look at the mythologies which have relatively from died out religions, people completely understand how they function as a fictional character. People completely bring them in, people play with them as they should, but people don't understand, are not, fail to picture the religions that are popular today in those shoes. I mean,
Mm.
you can have a scene where the Hulk is beating up Loki, but you cannot have that with, let's say, a character from Bible or Hindu mythology or Islamic mythology or anything that is very popular now. Although they are the same, but that won't be easy to accept.
It has been interesting to see, but I don't think production companies would dare to introduce, let's say, Thor hammering down on the prophet. I don't think they would touch that. Would be.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't see that too. I don't see
I
that
mean,
too.
the thing is, of course, that Norse mythology, I mean, even though I've read quite a bit of that, Mum taught me some of it, I didn't read that, taught a bit in school. I mean, it's definitely not live, seeing people live by that. I know there are people who say they do, and that's fine with me, but it's definitely not popular religion. It's something that's part of our cultural background, maybe. I mean, in the Netherlands, I mean, we're not particularly religious, but religion is Christianity, Islam, a bit of Hinduism, various stuff, but primarily Christianity and Islam.
I see. I see.
Uh,
So is,
and let's say, in general, entertainment industry won't touch that. As in, they definitely don't want to stir the boat in that or make enemies. I mean, they're aware that Muslims are rather touchy when it is about depicting the Prophet, um, and they definitely won't touch that. And I mean, I know that in the Netherlands, a few comedians have made fun of Christianity and Islam. The Christians, well, don't like it much, but won't protest too much. But Muslims will definitely let know that they don't like it.
I see. Yes, that is a bit. That is something. The stand-up comedy scene with the rise is also something that the religious are not a fan of. I can see that happening in India as well when the stand-up comedians make fun, even though they usually don't make fun of the religious figures themselves, but how the religious sentiment of them taken get taken advantage of by politicians. That's the main thing they make fun of. But politicians and their fans, being politicians and their fans, convert them into them making fun of the religion and make a big deal out of it. Unsurprisingly.
Okay.
Yeah, and one fun fact is Raymond was talking about expecting Jesus to show up sometime in the comic books. DC actually has a comic. I'm not sure if it is one single comic or a series. They had a spin-off kind of thing where there is main DC and there are series that function within it, but is not the main canon. So
Okay.
one of them was one of the comic had a second coming as a series where Jesus actually came in, and there was a
Ooh.
whole funny thing. So it wasn't very serious, but yeah. So, but as I said, it's not a main canon, so it's a bit obscure. Most people don't even know about it. And
I
have you,
certainly don't.
yeah, they don't. And have you watched about any? What are your thoughts about characters in popular media who are atheists and how they're depicted? Not the actors, but the characters themselves. The
Hmm.
one there are few that comes to mind. There is Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. Then there's Doctor House from House MD. These are the two that first comes to my mind. And personally, I am quite fond of the character from House MD. And what are your thoughts about how they are depicted? There are quite a few more. These are not the only ones. There are quite few more of
I
them.
mean, in that popular media, not certain if people are depicted in any way as being atheists. I mean, the other way around, religious people being depicted and often being mocked is definitely a thing.
Yeah, it is.
Particularly in more comedic oriented. I mean, the religious fanatic is obviously a meme, while atheist or openly atheist, um, I must think about that.
Yeah, sure.
It's
So,
not, I mean, it's not something that figure that pops up in my mind.
I see, I see.
I mean,
Yeah,
definitely not like, let's say, House, who is obviously and openly an atheist protagonist. I don't think we have something like that. I don't think that, I mean, a series like House is being broadcast on Dutch TV with subtitles, but I don't think such a series would work as a Dutch production.
okay, okay, okay.
I mean, as
I
an
don't.
original Dutch production, because essentially, I mean, the kind of Doctor House uh, represents is the ordinary doctor.
Okay. Oh, which show are you talking about? Doctor what?
How
Okay, 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 fine,
the
fine.
kind of
Yeah, yeah.
physician he depicts is the ordinary Dutch doctor. They are
Okay.
all like that. Well, not exactly the sarcasm, but I mean, in a conversation with my doctor, would be highly, um, let's say, surprised if they would bring religion into the conversation. That's definitely
Yes.
not done.
Yeah, 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 that's true. But I mean, since we're talking about Doctor House, even their religion itself wasn't a big thing in the show. It really popped out, but he was openly atheist, and that came up in conversations like periodically. There was a few episodes where he was he had some kind of communication with a patient who was either overtly religious or in one particular case a patient who was an atheist, and a few episodes depicting that, but that wasn't the main focus. Although it him being atheist was very prominent part of the show, just like with Sheldon in Big Bang. But one thing that I've noticed is when a prominent character in a popular media is depicted as openly as atheists, they are usually assholes. Like I like Dr. House as a character, but he is asshole. He's not a
Yes,
nice person.
no.
I agree with his opinions and he's very vocal about this. His opinions are always valid, but his lifestyle is not. He is an asshole. And
I,
that
I well remember the scene where he mocks a patient, or it's actually the mother of a small child, an infant, about
Oh, yeah, I
vaccination.
remember that. I remember that too. I actually remember the exact conversation, not line by line. I will be paraphrasing, but I remember the conversation they had. There was a religious, very young murder, like teen or almost teen who didn't want to get the child vaccinated because she was, the whole anti-vax bullshit. Like
yeah,
a big pharma, they are making money out of vaccines. And his response was, "Do you know what else industry is making a lot of money out of babies?" The mother gets puzzled, can't answer, and he basically screams at her that baby. What's that? Cabins? Not cabins. Coffins. Yeah, sorry,
yeah,
coffins for babies. And it was hilarious. And there
yes,
are quite a lot of iconic lines like that in the show, and it
yes.
really is hilarious.
And I mean, um, I would love to be able to deliver that kind of criticism to vaccination deniers and stuff like that, I mean, of course, this is scripted, and I don't script my own life. But damn, that's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We also have a few famous stand-up comedians who make it, bashing religion is a big part of their comedic routine. Uh, I
Mhm.
don't. I'm having a hard time remembering the names. The Stoff Hapner is one. Like his religion is not the main thing about his stand-up comedy, but he brings that up once in a while. There's another Mark something. But there was one particular one who I think he's dead now, but he was quite popular in his time. He was quite
American?
old. I
Yes.
think he was
Oh,
American. I'm
oh
having the hard
dear,
time remembering.
Carl.
Is it Maher? Bill Maher? I don't think it was Bill Maher.
I mean,
Maher.
is that the guy
Okay.
who did the sketch about God being the Almighty, but he can't handle money?
It,
Carlin?
I think you. Come on, wait.
George Carlin or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. George Cullen. George Cullen. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wait. Yes, exactly. George Cullen. Yes.
He's brilliant.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
what
He really is brilliant. He's brilliant and he's totally unhinged. He
yeah,
just doesn't give a fuck.
yeah. And I mean, weirdly enough, in the Netherlands, that kind of comedy. I mean, first of all, stand-up comedy isn't really the Dutch way how comedians do, but that raising criticism of religion isn't the Dutch way to do that. It's not. I mean, maybe comedians can get away with it, but in general, a more mild criticism of religion is the thing, not the scathing Carlin way. But I must admit that Carlin did that quite well, and
Yes, he
definitely
did.
hilariously so.
Yeah, 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 totally. And how big is sports in the Dutch society?
Is what?
Sports, football, cricket, etc.
Oh, yeah.
I know
Big, big,
Netherlands
big, big,
played.
big. I mean, football, as in soccer, um cycling, in winter, this time of year, speed skating, and of course, nowadays, Formula One racing, because Max Verstappen is a Dutchman and he's already the world champion. He's very popular. Yeah, sports is a big thing.
Huh. And oh, by the way, Netherlands played in World Cup this year.
Yes, we did.
Cricket World Cup. I'm talking about
Yes,
cricket. I think this was their first cricket World Cup, and they did quite well.
yeah,
They did quite
as I
well.
understand it. I mean, I'm not a fan of cricket. Sorry, the game is a bit too complicated for me.
I don't follow sports in general either. I just have cricket is a very big thing in India, so everyone around me follows cricket.
Yeah,
Hence, I got to know that I get a few of the information without trying to get them. And one of them was that Netherlands plays this time, and it was
yes.
their first.
And I mean, I early in the tournament, I saw that at one moment, at one point, point, the Netherlands was, let's say, at the bottom half of the standings, but England was quite at the bottom, which I, of course, used to make fun of my English friends.
Okay, okay. The other reason I brought in sports is because, as I've seen in a lot of countries, religion also plays a big role in sports. This is a big problem in America, not as much in other countries. Like it's not a big deal even in India, but it plays a big role in America for some dumb reason. Is that a case there, or is it not?
Not at all. I mean, there is a religious side to which football club you're a supporter of, but that's not religion as we ordinarily would say that. But people are a fan of, let's say, I mean, I'm a Feyenoord supporter. Feyenoord is the big football club in Rotterdam. I used to have season tickets, and being a supporter of a football club is the closest we have to religious ideas in sports. But there's nothing like we believe particular things. It's more like the other ones in Amsterdam, Ajax, are the enemy, heathens. You don't talk with them. That kind of stuff. I mean, I don't really do it like that, but I used to live in Amsterdam. Oh, sorry, I used to work in Amsterdam for a bit, about a year. And on Monday morning, the topic at the coffee machine was football. And how Feyenoord did, and how Ajax did, and taking the piss if one or both lost. And particularly, of course, twice a year when they played each other. However, that ended. But that was friendly in general. But I do know that people who pretty much were supporters who fought each other. They
Oh, I
can,
know people like that too. I
yes,
know people like that too. And it is really funny to watch.
it is. But I mean, it shouldn't be. I mean, I'm no fan of violence for whatever reason. So it's a bad thing. But years ago, was in the 1980s, I think, near Beverwijk, Ajax supporters and Feyenoord supporters had a pre-arranged fight, and one of the people in them died.
Oh,
Yeah, that was bad. And essentially, one of the supporters was whacked on the head with a hammer and died a few minutes later. That was a bad thing. But one of the comedians used that in a comedy sketch. I mean, it doesn't translate easily into English. But I mean, when you are there, as in you're willing to fight to death for your football club, that's very close to religion.
yeah, it is. Yes, 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 yes. The thing is, the whole club and team and their fan things and the religions kind of function in a very similar way. Hence they are both popular for the similar reasons. At least something good comes out of sports, all beyond these side things, while the other doesn't, not as much.
Mm, I mean, popular sport, and as in, for instance, football, I'm not quite certain of that. I mean, with football comes quite a bit. I mean, I like to watch football, and a good football game is definitely a joy to watch. But international football, club football, brings up sentiments in people that I'm not so fond of. And of course, in respect to last World Cup, there was, of course, the thing that uh, the way the championship was, or the final was bought, the way imported labor was being treated by
Yes.
the
Qatar
Emirates.
is not a good role model of a country. They
Exactly.
never has been.
I mean, I'm definitely not big on that. And I well remember in 1978, the World Cup final was held in Argentina. At that moment, it goes through dictatorship, and that dictatorship was definitely using the World Cup as an, you say that, way to show them. That's a bit like Hitler did in the 1936 Olympics. That is a part of sport that I definitely don't. The propaganda bit of international sports. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I didn't watch the cricket World Cup, but I wouldn't be surprised to learn that India used that to show itself on the international stage in a way that it only wouldn't.
The thing has died down a bit now compared to how it was quite a few years back. I'm not talking about India, but for the world in general. It's because now diversity has become more widespread for obvious and positive reasons. Hence, when you look at any team-based sports, the team usually have people from more than one community at least. Hence, that propaganda bit is not as prominent as it used to be. Even in India, for this particular cricket World Cup, one of the more best playing players, like one of the players who had the biggest contribution to India reaching the finals, was Mohammad Sami. And as the name suggests, he is a Muslim, not a Hindu. So that kind of propaganda doesn't play as well now as it used to be when teams were basically from the completely from a single community. But then again, it depends on the country we are talking about. Because if you look at religious nations, like nations which have a state religion, even irrespective of whether they are theocracies or not, uh, the players are usually entirely from the ruling side. Like if you compare to Pakistan, then they had, as much as I know, I'm not a very like an expert when it comes to sports, but as far as I know, they had like two Hindu players in over 70 years of history. So that's not a good example, and it's not like there was no good players from the Hindu community there. It's just that Pakistan as an Islamic nation, and Pakistan is once again not a good example of a nation doing it right. They have a lot of problems, but that's just an example in this case. It's more prominent when it comes to the athletic side of sports. The Olympics, for example, where we are focusing on one person winning medal, and that's where the propaganda plays a bigger role. You will find players escaping from China or other authoritarian nations speaking up against it. For then we had one of the Iranian chess players speaking up against the Iranian regime and refusing to wear headscarf. Then some players recently, some I think it was a German chess player who refused to play in Saudi Arabia as a protest against their Islamic laws and stuff. And that is more prominent on that individualistic side of sports, where the diversity doesn't play as much of a role as it does.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware of I lost the female chess player you're talking about. is a Ukrainian player who played for. No, never mind. Another Eastern European, oh, well, not really Eastern European, but European country for a bit, but Ukrainian. Yes, she refused to play the Women's World Chess Championship in Saudi Arabia because essentially she was required to wear the veil outside, let's say, the play arena and the hotel and stuff like that. So she said, "Back off," in more polite terms, but yes. And of course, she's quite right.
Yeah, yeah. I think even the Iranian men's football team, when they were playing some international players, it's not possible to do within Iran, but when they were playing some international match, they uh, did some kind of public display of a protest against the Iranian regime in support
Yes.
of the all the women fighting against that hijab and that moral policing that has been going
Yeah.
on, which is pretty commendable because they will have to go back to that nation.
And I admit that that was quite courageous.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, let me tell you, when they returned home, they would have to explain themselves. Iran is friendly on any kind of criticism internationally. Um, yes, of course, when their own people, I mean, of course, we had the whole, women protests in Iran, well, last few years. And I mean, it's died down a bit now, but let me tell you, that will return.
Yeah, it will return. The thing is, there are two contributing factors to that. One is the media kind of moves on from one thing when it becomes ongoing for a long period, and plus what happened was some other bigger, relatively speaking, bigger issues came up like the Ukraine stuff and other wars that superseded the public attention, and that kind of
Yeah.
contributed with it dying out in the public view. But I'm sure it hasn't died out there. It's
So,
definitely
let me
still
tell you,
going on.
it's still going on.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, do hope that Iran will change in that way, that at least in respect that they'll treat women right.
It will be difficult though because they just don't have an they don't just have a state religion, they are a proper theocracy, just
Yes.
like we cannot really hope Vatican will change their wrong ways tomorrow.
Yeah.
They
I
practically
agree.
have no defense against them. They are almost dictatorial
Yeah.
countries,
Yeah. Okay.
just
Well,
not as
that's.
under a single person.
I mean, there's a big difference, of course, as well. I mean, it's not as if the Vatican has a large women population
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Vatican
who are
prac-
economically important.
Yes, totally. The difference between Vatican and Iran in this aspect was Vatican completely came into existence for the sole purpose of being a theocracy, while Iran had a revolution. They did not start out like that. They had a much more secular nation under the Persians and many other diverse ruling before this whole Islamic revolution came in. Hence, the protest is much stronger there. While
Yes.
any sensible person will not be interested in living in Vatican, while people in Iran are kind of stuck
Exactly.
there. They did not they did not come into there. They were there before all this happened and they're stuck there. That's a huge difference.
Yes, yes, firmly. Yeah, exactly, got it. And I mean, it really depends on how long the Iranian people will essentially um, accept the theocracy.
Yes, yes, it kind of
I
depends
mean,
on that.
eventually, when enough people decide we've had enough, kicking out those, what do you call them, Muslim priests, imams,
Largi?
Yeah, the
Clergy is a
clergy.
common term, to be honest. It's
Yeah,
not.
yeah, is not particularly difficult. I mean, it will be painful, people will die, blood will be shed, but it's perfectly doable.
Yeah, it is doable.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
if
pretty
you,
much every nation that's been in a revolution knows how to do it.
yes, yes. And surprisingly, Europe had a big role in the whole Islamic revolution in Iran. Like they
Unfortunately,
did not
yes,
want an Islamic revolution per se, but it was a proxy war to win over the oil fields, and it kind of turned out into what we have today.
yes.
The goal was different, but
I mean, after all,
they did
also,
get what they were looking for. The goal wasn't establishing a proper government or anything. The goal was simply controlling the oil fields, which was
yes, of course,
successful, but the secondary outcome wasn't a very positive one.
yeah. And I mean, I mean, I was alive when the Iranian Revolution happened. I also remember that Khomeini, the later boss of Iran, lived in France when he moved to Iran and to become the leader. France had been, how do you say that? I mean, they were fine with him living there. They didn't care about his propaganda. They were fine with that. I mean, nowadays France, of course, isn't a big fan of Islam anymore.
I don't
But
think France was a fan of Islam even back then for obvious reasons. They just didn't consider it to be any big of a problem, which they
exactly, yeah,
have realized that it is now.
yeah. I mean, of course, the large number of Muslim immigrants in France weren't there yet. I mean, they were there, but not as visibly as they are now. So, of course, France is now treading on eggshells about Islam. On the one hand, they have their secular society, and rules about, let's say, wearing the veil and stuff like that. But they're also aware that if they piss off Muslims too much, they'll have riots on their hands.
Yes, yes, that yeah, yeah, they are in a bit of a dilemma
Mhm.
because when you look at secularism, there it's a lot more prominent than a lot of other places feature supposed to be secular. Like it's a lot more absolute there compared to any other places. For example, even when in India, we we are supposed to be secular, but it's not as absolute as it is there. There's a huge difference between secularism in France versus secularism in India.
Well, in
And
France, the secular state is a very big thing. Um, the late, I mean, let's take France is secular in particularly against Roman Catholicism. I mean, France is the atheists in France, which is the majority of the people, don't believe in the Roman Catholic God. Alle gods don't matter much, but the Roman Catholic, that's all it's about.
yeah, yeah, it's that was whole about. I mean, the whole thing with the Renaissance and that revolution was to escape that griefs and that problematic influence of the Catholic Church. That
Yes,
was the whole thing, and
yes,
for them, they weren't under the influence of any other religion when that happened. Hence,
exactly.
it wasn't as important back then as it is slowly becoming now.
Weirdly enough, years ago when I dated a Jewish woman, at one moment she remarked about my atheism. Oh, the God you don't believe in is the Calvinist God. And she was damn right. I mean, the Netherlands is a deeply Calvinist nation. Even our Catholics are Calvinists. in a way. At least they behave like them. Uh,
But isn't the Catholic God and the Judaic God the same being? Like they are both Yahweh, and they even use
Presumably,
the same exact same name.
yes, yes. Um, well, I mean, the names are a bit problematic, but I mean, presumably Yahweh, the God of the Christians, and uh, the name of the Muslim God, I know that, but not from
Oh,
mine. Uh,
Allah.
Allah are the same God,
Yeah, they are.
presumably. But well, the theology rather diverges. I mean, Christianity,
Yes, it does. The thing with like when Christianity popped up, they weren't like Judaism is wrong. They were like Judaism uh, is telling you lies about the God. Like the God is not wrong, but the prophets are wrong, something like that. And when Islam came up, they did the exact same thing. They were like the Christians and the Judaizers has
yes, that's
corrupted
correct.
the God, and the
Yes,
real Yahweh is what I'm telling you, me, Prophet Muhammad. That was
yes,
the whole thing. Like they did exactly what Christianity did.
yeah. And I mean, the theology is so different that it's difficult to compare Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Uh, I mean,
Besides all the subsections they have.
yes, and I mean, there is, of course, quite a lot of history that changed opinions. I mean, from the Middle Ages, Christianity has been on a warlike footing with Islam regarding the Crusades and all that. Um, Christian Europe, particularly medieval Europe, was very unkind to Jews. I mean, yeah, I remember stories. Well, I mean, Spain, of course, kicked out the Jews in the 15th century. In Germany, well, 1300, Jews were being hunted pretty much. Um, Most of our nations have had, most European nations, I mean, have had very troubled relation with Jewry. And unfortunately, even my nation is not brilliant in that, even though we welcomed, after we kicked out Spanish and had the Dutch Republic, we welcomed Jewish immigrants and had a largest Jewish population. Unfortunately, when the Germans invaded, quite a few Dutch were quite willing to help them round up Jews, be it for money or just for principle. We don't look too good in that.
Yes. Yeah. The Crusades and the Crusades, uh, besides many other different wars and the whole refugee exchange and the formation of nations and the role of religion in that, that's a huge topic of its own. We should,
Yes,
yeah, we should follow up on that on a different episode. That's a good idea. We should do that. And for now, there's something that you know religion has two different interesting influences when it comes to media. There is one where in some places America would be a good example. India is another example. In nations like America and India, religion plays a big role in media and becomes a prominent part of the media and promoting itself through the media. While in some other nations, religion completely suppresses the media and kind of blocks it entirely. For example, in Iran, there was a big film industry before this revolution. There are many prominent Iranian filmmakers who are very celebrated in the film world, in the cinema world, including Cannes and other film festivals. But after the revolution, that industry completely died out. We don't hear about any movies like that at all. And what are your views on that? And have you experienced any change in that around you? And and what would be your recommendation of a favorite movie or show? That's something we can end on.
Now that you mention it, there's an interesting bit of that minority Orthodox Christian movement happens that essentially says you're not supposed to watch TV, you're not supposed to have TV. That, weirdly enough, that doesn't apply to computers and YouTube. Don't try ask me why I don't understand that, but it's fact. Um, uh, and
There was also a subsect of Christianity that was popular for a very small period of time, which is the Puritans, and they rejected all forms of modernity as something that is a corruption from the Christian ways. They
yes,
weren't popular for obvious reasons because
the
that
big,
going popular would be completely against the whole collection of money by the evangelicals and
yeah,
other
but
popular Christian
it's
organizations.
a bit like that. We call them forget me yet Christian Reformed churches, and it's only a small minority of that. I mean, all the Christian Reformed has been a large part of Protestantism in the Netherlands, but that particular bit of that has always been very small. But in a few communities, that meant no TV, of course, don't vaccinate your children. They're a bit difficult in general. But weirdly enough, for one reason or another, they decided that the computer and the internet and YouTube is fine. And as I understand it, um, that is changing that community because essentially they get information from the outside world. And let's say their children are so fond of the world anymore. I'm not saying that it'll go away, but I would like that.
Yeah, I don't think it will die out per se. It's not exactly popular to begin with anyway. Even look at the subsections in popular religion. For example, the whole monastery structure. It's not limited to just Christianity. It's popular in Buddhism and some other forms in other religions as well. Like there's pilgrimage for Hinduism. There's monastery is a shared term between both Christianity and Buddhism. Islam has some form of its own. They do exist where people go to live in secluded religious places, completely cut out from the entire world. But
Yeah,
that's a very small section of the very religious community. So yeah, that won't be popular. That will lose more popularity now that people are more accustomed to witnessing the
yeah.
popular media
Many
everywhere.
in the Netherlands, Roman Catholic monasteries have all but died. There are a few left, but there are elderly men now and very few young men entering the more young women. It's there's not much future in that.
Yeah, yeah. Although I don't expect them to die out completely because they
Oh,
are almost like a alternative that people who can seek for one of the three reasons I can think of. One would be because they are way too religious and way too, you know, doctrinated. The other would be maybe they're tired of the world for a lot of possible reasons and are looking for a way out and some kind of refuge.
I think that Dutch monasteries have always been a bit of a refuge for people who were a bit
Yeah,
socially awkward. Um, and I mean, that's not a bad thing, by the way.
yeah, I have nothing against people joining something as a refuge. That's not
Yeah,
something I am against.
no,
It's an individual thing. If someone is seeking peace
exactly.
and finds it's something here, it's up to them. Why would I stop that? Similarly, the third one might be a little problematic. Sometimes you will find that criminals kind of use that as an escape over getting jail time. That has happened quite a bit of times, and
Yes.
yeah, that's something them using it as a loophole.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not responsible for that. If I were part of that religion, I would be worried about it. I mean, it's like, let's say, Roman Catholicism and hiding sexual predators when they're priests. I mean, that doesn't look right. That's not good. Um, and if I were a Roman Catholic, I would be deeply worried about that.
Yeah, you would be. Funny that you brought up. There have been a few churches who are filing for bankruptcy, which is a something that businesses do, not non-profit organizations, uh, as a cop out to all the legal cases and stuff like that.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
it's it's something that is popping up. I'm not sure how that will go on when it becomes more prominent, but that's something we'll say. And like for ending the episode, what is some of your favorite shows or movies that you think everyone should watch?
Oh, that's a very good question. Um, Show I don't really know. Well, I mean, there's a British political show that I'm very fond of. Have I got news for you? Um, it's a political comedy show in the form of a quiz, a news quiz. I absolutely love that.
Jeopardy?
Hmm?
Is
Oh,
it Jeopardy?
have I got news for you? It's a British BBC show.
Oh,
Uh, they essentially they take the piss of British politics, but it's in the form of a topical news quiz. But definitely, I mean, the quiz bit isn't what it's about. It's essentially taking the piss of politicians, which is always good. Uh,
oh.
Film, I haven't watched much film lately, I must admit. Um, no, I have no particular things that films we should see. But in general, if you have the opportunity, watch a few German films. They are very interesting.
Huh.
Just for the music, have a look at. The title is Paris, Texas. It's an elderly film now. I mean, it's made in the 1990s, I think. But the music right through is absolutely brilliant.
Ah, okay. Okay, I'm not familiar with either of them, to be
Yeah,
honest. Yeah,
never
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
It
Yeah,
just popped in my mind. I mean, it's in no way religious, but I mean, it's an American road movie. It's a strange story. It's beautifully made with brilliant music.
oh,
It's in this Paris, Texas. Political
ah, okay.
propaganda and religious sentiments is always, yes, theoretically, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, wait. Now the name makes sense to you. That's a very smart username. And okay, for me, it would be recently I watched a few films from Iya Sulaiman. Uh, he has a very unique style of filmmaking where he himself is one of the protagonists in his films. He doesn't have a lot of films. He's made like three or four films, uh, and he is a completely silent spectator in the films, and things just happen around him, like they are not following a proper story or anything. Things are happening that are connected to each other, but not a completely story, and they are not documented, they are fiction, but made in kind of depictions of what's happening around. So it's a very unique kind of type of films. They're great, and in terms of show for this audience, I will highly recommend two actually. One would be House MD. It's a bit long, so that's a disclaimer. It's quite long. It has 10 seasons, I think, but it's good. I enjoyed the show. And the other would be an anime which is Neon Genesis Evangelion. It uses the biblical stories in a very unique way, and surprisingly, it is more biblically accurate than the popular evangelical version of whatever they preach.
I'll give it a watch.
Cool. Okay, I don't think we have any questions. So, yeah, how do I end this?
Uh, well, essentially, it's time to thank the audience for their attention. Um, and for you to thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Oh yeah, same here, always as always. And thank you to all our patrons who are supporting us on Patreon. You if you have that option, whoever is watching, you have that option to support us there. And thanks again for watching, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation.